I have never heard anything about a Edmonton scout being fired. And besides, McDavid and Draisaitl who fell into their laps, they've always been poor scouters. And you can see it's affecting them. Because everyone's talking about the big names not performing, but Kyler Yamamoto this year is horrible.
Well, I've always said, in my opinion, I've always think he's been a bit overrated. I mean, when you're playing with McDavid or Draisaitl, I know he can play on the third line at times, and your main job is to get points. Yamamoto's main thing is to skate fast, get points, and he's not doing it. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Austin. You're absolutely right.
And I know it's hard, being a draft revisionist, but Philip Broberg in 8 games only has 1 assist. He's a -8. He is a defenseman. Defensemen take a bit longer to go.
He's 22.
Yeah, but the
There's
pick
20,
after
not
him,
22, 20.
The draft pick right after Philip Broberg was Trevor Zegras, who was known to be good in his draft. This wasn't like an unknown talent. It was at the time the Broberg pick was made, it was called a bad pick. Broberg wasn't supposed to go to 15, 20s, and he went top 10.
But if you're Edmonton, you were always, what was one thing that's consistent with Edmonton for years was poor defensemen. It seemed like that was a move you had to make. I don't agree it should have been made at that pick. You probably could have traded down.
You always draft best player available. You add Trevor Zegras to this roster, how are they doing?
Well, they have a lot better line, and maybe if they have Zegras, they don't have to go for a guy like Hyman and use that cap somewhere else. Or
to sign a defenseman.
Tough guy or another.
Yeah.
And it's funny watching this Edmonton team, because you're right, for years they never had defensemen. And now they have all these defensemen, and they can't score. And I would argue their defense isn't even that great. Clearly not. And their goaltending's not fantastic. And I'm saying that with the wall of Smith behind me.
I would say that the defense is not bad, though. Darnell Nurse has been all right. He's kind of having a down year. But they have a rookie defenseman right now, Evan Bouchard, who's been playing goddamn great.
I think James and I are on the same page here. I cannot believe some people just said a defense that has Cody Ceci, Duncan Keith, and Tyson Barrie in it is okay.
And that got rid of Bear, too.
Yeah.
Which I still think...
And they have Chris Russell is still in the NHL.
Shot blocking legend, man. Did you see
Shot blocking legend.
Did you see the
Chris Russell,
man? The golden shin
pad? Get fact check.
Okay, they got him a golden shin pad.
You can tell who the Flames fans are when an ex-Flame player's name's brought up and they immediately sit up a bit more. They're being like, hey, whoa, yeah.
What, JG, what are you talking about? I have never cheered for the Flames in my life.
That is true.
I think...
You've cried about watching.
I think it's pretty obvious, from looking at the roster and this discussion, it's been really eye-opening for me that I never really thought about this now, but I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I think Edmonton relies too heavily on expensive, middle-aged, signings for secondary scoring and not cheap, young talent. Because they're just not able to get that cheap, young talent. So the downside is you have to go out and get externally, like a Hyman, and you're paying top dollar for a free agent. But you could probably get in the same production, like Austin said, you draft Zegras for cap minimum, or for the young guys. So I think that makes a huge difference when you don't have the young guys performing, and you just don't have the cap to sign.
I am gonna take a little bit of a different approach here. It's not that I don't think Edmonton can't score. They can score. They don't. They're top 15, the top half of the league for goals for. But what really hurts Edmonton, and I know obviously that's going to be heavily weighted by the two-headed beast that they have.
Exactly. Yeah,
but
exactly.
what they really is hurting the Oilers is their goals against, their PK, and their goaltending. All of those rank in the bottom 10 of the league. They get hemmed in their own zone, and then they can't get that puck out.
And how much of that do you think happens when McDavid or Draisaitl aren't on the ice? And the other guys are clearly not scoring.
Well,
so
yeah, but
what are they doing? If they're not scoring, and some
Edmonton
fan might tell me they've been in the offensive zone. The fourth line's always in the offensive zone doing something. Well, clearly they're not doing enough. All these other lines, and if McDavid and Draisaitl have to get 2 points a game every year just to even think about qualifying, that shows there's a lot of weaknesses, and that shows to me that their team can't score.
I mean, you're not wrong, but at the same time, when your defensive end, or not your defensive end, but your back end can't get that puck and win those battles in the corners, and they're just getting hemmed in by the third, fourth, and second lines of whatever team they're playing against, that alone is the issue. You don't even give your offense a chance to score, right? Like, when your defense can't win those puck battles in the corner and can't make those outlet passes, you're not going to score anything.
That's fair. But if you're, they've made all these moves on the blue line. They got rid of Bear, brought in some other players, gave out some big money to some
they've
players. They've
made some of the worst moves on the back end. They let Adam Larson go.
They traded for Duncan Keith at $5.5 million.
Exactly.
It's pretty bad.
They signed Cody Ceci. They got rid of Bear, who's a good puck-moving young defenseman. Like, nothing's good. No back moves have been good. They've been okay with managing their forwards, but like their back end has been horrible.
And especially with Edmonton fans, we were kind of talking about this with Philly fans going, do you trust management with a rebuild? I'm not saying Edmonton should rebuild, but even a retool. If you're an Edmonton fan, how many times does this happen where it's, we need to retool again, we need to rebuild, we're finally we have all these great players, everything's great, and it's gone. And it feels like they've traded all the players that they had, and now have a huge problem from all the players they traded away. I mean, Hall's gone, Eberle's gone. Those are guys who could put the puck in the net. Even if they were a little overpaid, especially Eberle towards the end of his career, while now in Seattle, he can still score though. And now they don't have those guys. I would say their defense isn't up there in the NHL. I wouldn't say it's a top defense by any means, but they're paying them like they are. Their forward core, a lot of players are getting paid a lot of money, and they're not doing anything. So with Edmonton, I think we can say it's management as well, especially with their history. But then what do you do? Every couple of years, do you just restart? You get the next Connor McDavid and then go from there? Like, what moves do you make as Edmonton? Because you've done this before.